김상엽 2050 탄소중립 녹색성장위원회 위원장님이십니다. 위원장님께서는 대통령실, 국정기획수석실 미래비전비서관에 이어 녹색성장기획관을 역임하셨으며 카이스트 녹색성장대학원 초빙교수 전제주연구원장으로 역임하며 대통령직인수위원회 상임기획위원 등의 활동을 통해 제주를 넘어 대한민국의 저탄소 녹색성장을 이끌고 계십니다.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 17th Jeju Forum. Thank you for joining us today for Jeju, the Future of Coexistence and Cooperation, the Policy Direction of Jeju's Space Industry in the New Space Era. Simultaneous interpretation is available for this session. For service in Korean, set your device on Channel 1. For English, select Channel 2. Now I would like to hand over the stage to Kim Sang-hyup, Chairperson of 2050 Carbon Neutrality Commission, who will moderate this session. Everyone, please welcome the moderator.
Thank you for a very kind introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. The common language of the Jeju Forum is English. But as you see, the case of Korean movie, Squid Game, 오징어 Game, which got the Emmy Award, and that was done in Korean, which means Korean is getting popular, global, and universal. And today's topic is about the space and humanity. So from now on, I will moderate this session in the new emerging language, which is 한국말. 예. 예, 이정재 배우도 한국말.
Actor Lee Jung-jae actually won the Emmy Awards with his acting in Korean, right? He made me proud, actually. And today we are going to talk about space. And all the speakers we have invited are pioneers leading the space industry in Korea. So I don't think it's going to be a problem if we ask them to speak in Korean. I don't think we are against the Jeju Forum's policy if we speak in Korean here in this session. Let me introduce today's keynote speaker and all of our panelists. Our keynote speaker is President Lee Sang-ryul of Korea Aerospace Research Institute. Please welcome him with a big hand. Literally, President Lee Sang-ryul is the first ever space engineer in Korea. Starting from the March 2021, he became the president of the Korea Aerospace Research Institute, or KARI, which is in charge of the entire space industry in Korea. He's very busy, but he will stay with us until the end. He wanted to be here in person, but since he has a business trip next day, he is currently joining us through Zoom. About the Korea's space development directions in the era of space economy, he's going to give us a keynote speech. And we have some of the renowned panelists. We first of all have Professor Lee Tae-sik from Hanyang University, and he is going to be the next president of Korean Federation of Science and Technology Societies, which is the leading organization in terms of science in Korea. He won his degrees in the Wisconsin University in the US and says that Jeju is the ideal place for the domestic space industry development. And also, as our next panelist, we have Professor Han Jae-heung from the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology. He has served as the department chair of the KAIST for about 6 years, and he's currently a professor in KAIST as well. And as you are well aware, last December in Jeju, small science rocket was launched here in Jeju in the private sector, and he was the leading architect who made it happen. And next we have CEO Shin Dong-yoon of Parage. He spent his younger days in Canada, and for his new dream, he decided to go to KAIST. Parrish is a aerospace startup located in Daejeon to develop the smallest launch vehicle and the smartest launch vehicle. He decided to establish the company Parrish. I think he's going to share a very interesting story with us. The fourth panelist is the Executive Vice President of the Technology Innovation Center of the Korea Aerospace Industry. Starting from the 2020, he is currently leading the Technology Innovation Center. So over the last several decades, he has been in charge of the manufacturing, design, and the operation of the aircraft. And last but not least, we have a representative from the Jeju Research Institute. Until August, I had this honor to lead the Jeju Research Institute. It was a very big honor from me, and we have Associate Research Fellow Jo Namun from that organization, Jeju Research Institute. He majored economics for his doctor's degree at the graduate school and majored computer science for his bachelor's degree. He's also working in a team opening up a new frontier for the Jeju's space industry. So we have invited such a renowned group of panelists. And as you're well aware, the title of the session is The Policy Direction of Jeju's Space Industry in the New Space Era. As you're well aware, on 6th of July, the space economy vision was announced by the Yoon Suk-yeol administration. The Nuri was launched and Danuri was launched this year. And as you're well aware, this provided a new impetus behind Korea's space industry. The future space economy roadmap will be announced going forward. And as you are well aware, we are also working on establishing relevant infrastructure. In this regard, in terms of the launching and the operation of the satellites, Jeju is being pointed out as the most ideal place in Korea. Then what role can Jeju play in terms of domestic space industry, and what kind of policy directions should we think about? That is why we are here. We want to address these questions. And for your information, today, the National Satellite Integrated Operations Center established in Jeju starts operation. Why don't we just give it up together? Give it up. I believe that Jeju will host 3 more related forums related to the space industry. And as was introduced, I am chairperson of the 2050 Carbon Neutrality Commission. And as you're well aware, climate change is a big topic, and we see climate disasters. Some experts say that if unchecked, the entire Earth will be inhabitable. That means we will not be able to live on Earth. Well, that might depend on how we do now and what we do now. But if we just do and live business as usual, I think there are reasonable I think it is reasonable that we have to worry a lot about our future unless we make something different and unless we make changes. And I think in this sense, this session will be of a great help. Then without further ado, let me invite President Lee Sang-ryul of the Korea Aerospace Research Institute for his keynote speech titled Korea Space Development Directions in the Era of Space Economy. Please give him a big hand.
네, 원장님.
Mr. President, I think you're muted. You need to unmute yourself. Can everyone hear me? Yes, we can hear you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lee Sang-yul, the president of Korea Aerospace Research Institute, or KARI. It would have been quite nice if I could have visited Jeju and be with you face to face. It's a pleasure to be able to meet all of you via online. As you know, the Integrated Satellite Center related seminar was held in Jeju, so I was able to visit Jeju. We are talking about space economy. I mean, this is not a new terminology. But as was mentioned by a moderator, on the 6th of July, when President Yoon visited our research institute, he has written that, the space economy has finally opened. Well, our space economy, this is still ongoing. We are living in an age of changes. We have to think about how space should be developed and also how this should be aligned with the space economy. I'm going to talk about the trend of space economy, and I'm going to talk about Korea's achievements so far, and I will also talk about the space development direction. Well, as of 2021, the world space economy size is about $370 billion. And so it would be about 450 to 500 trillion Korean won. And this is an economy that is growing about 6.3% and per annum. And so by 2030, the economy is expected to be about $642 billion. The space economy, as you can see from the left-hand side, the commercial market accounts for 75%, and government procurement market accounts for about 16%. And although government only accounts for 16%, but government still plays a very important role in that it has to set the direction. And if you look at the status of the space market, let's look at what's at the bottom, which is satellite utilization service. And this service accounts for almost 90% of all the services. The manufacture and launch only make up less than 15%. So this is quite different from the market situation here in Korea. I said the government accounts for about 16% of the total space economy, but the government is the entity that is doing most of the R&D. And if you would look at investment, the government budget is about $92 billion, and the U.S. is a far ahead of other countries. And if in terms of investment, well, Korea has a relatively small investment into space. We were quite lucky in that we were able to develop our space despite the small investment due to the support from the government as well as from the citizens and the hard work of the space-related researchers. And the size is, as you can see, about 3.4 trillion won. That is, I'm talking about the Korean industry. And the government accounts for about 600 to 700 billion won. And as I said, Korea is different from other countries in that we are behind other countries in terms of manufacturing of the satellites and the launching of vehicles. And our portion in the upstream is quite large. It's about 38%. And upstream in other markets only accounts for 15%. And the utilization market, we are smaller than the global average. And government invests about 600 to 800 billion won, and this year about 734 billion won was invested into space. Investment, as you can see, fluctuates because the projects, well, sometimes the project milestones, the project progresses are quite different. When we talk about space economy, well, this is a very important chart, rather a complicated one, but this tells us what the characteristics of space economy is. Downstream, which is the utilization, accounts for 85% of the total market, and the upstream is very important because upstream is the stream that can produce innovation and thereby dramatically change the overall market. And since year 2000, there have been very different types of private investment, and that has brought about destructive solutions. Not just technological solutions, but in terms of products, in terms of processes, we were able to witness innovations. And new values, of course, have been created as a result. And public procurement. Well, this was done mainly by the government, but in order to share the risks, the private sector is creating markets. And compared to the traditional approach, as the SpaceX and others such as a Planet, have appeared, so that non-space companies were able to play important roles in making the industry more innovative. In the past, well, in order to enhance a country's status, money was invested into space, but now economical aspects are being emphasized when it comes to space. That is why we began to use this terminology of space economy. And if you look at Korea, the Nuri, the second launch, was success. But if you look at the past 30 years, so in early 1990s, we had a first phase and second phase rocket, and we had sounding rockets were developed mainly. And then we began to develop, which is the liquid propelled sounding rocket. And so this was launched back in 2002. And however, we thought this was not enough. So we tried to have cooperation with international players, and that started the narrow program. The first part was provided by Russia, and the second part, and then we made this a launching vehicle that could launch about 100 kilograms weight of small satellites. And then we felt that we needed to have our own launching vehicle. And to have our own launching vehicle, we need to develop technologies related to engines, technologies related to fuselage, as well as components. So we had to develop all those on our own. And the first launch failed, and second launch took place in June of 2010. And however, that effort began in March of 2010. So it took about 12 years. And the reason that it took so much time is that as we were designing and developing a liquid engine, was quite difficult and took a lot of time. However, even if we had the prototypes, we just did not have the space to test it. we needed a facility to do testing as well as to manufacturing, and we also needed to have the launching vehicles, and that is why it took us over 12 years. And this is something that you might have seen before. This is a scene of our second launch.
마지막 gem성은 드론을 이용한 것입니다. 1차 발사. 이 부분입니다.
So I'm sure you remember this scene. If we see this from afar, this looks like this, and we were able to record this at a higher angle. Nudie. Well, there are 5 cameras installed. These are where the cameras are located. So the pairing as well as inside and outside of the bodies. And when there are separation takes place, where there is ignition, we are able to see them from the cameras that have been attached to the rockets. And in the second launch, everything went well. Everything went quite well. And the things that we failed in the first launch they were able to overcome in terms of the separation of the pairing. Well, we took this picture from just one side, so you will not be able to see everything. But you do see a separation taking place. So as the pairing was removed, you do see this satellite. And also the cube satellite, this was well separated as well. And so that was the last separation. And then the 5 cube satellites were separated successfully.
Unlike the launch vehicle, when it comes to satellites, it is more accessible from our end, and it is easier to do international cooperation regarding satellites. So 50 kilo class 우리별 were developed, and we developed 우리별 1, 우리별 2, and 우리별 3 until 9. Coincidentally, we wanted to develop these small satellites to application satellites and to be a more premium one. And to that end, we started this Korea multi-purpose satellite composite, focusing on the concept of application. And when it comes to geosynchronous satellites, we didn't specifically mention like multi-purpose or application, but it is an application satellite. Over the last 30 years, we have developed such diverse satellites as you can see from the slide. In 1999, the multi-purpose satellite worked for about 8 years after being launched in 1999. As for the second one, it is still up there, like taking images. And it was fired and launched in 2005, so it is like working for about 16 years. As for the Cheonlian 1, it was launched in 2001, and so it has been working for about 11 years. As for Cheonlian 3, it has been working more than a decade. So you can see that a lot of satellites are up there working like 9 years, 7 years, or about 4 years. And the last one, a little more than 2 years. The latest one would be the one launched in the year 2021, which is a CAS, or Compact Advanced Satellite. Aside from the expenses put in the first ever multi-purpose satellite, which retired, all the expenses and the development budget put in the satellites are still giving us a reward, which is something that we should be extremely proud of. And us and NASA developed KPLO, or Korea Pathfinder Lunar Orbiter. It was launched from the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. So the moon orbits around the Earth, and the satellite flies towards the sun and follows this line to get there. And about that, to give you the explanation about mission, I have prepared a video. And the space exploration photography has several meanings. A high-resolution camera accurately captures the lunar terrain. The goal is to intensively photograph candidate areas for our lunar lander to explore around 2030 and identify and respond to landing risk factors and build our own lunar exploration topographical data to determine areas worthy of exploration. It is the task of the PolChem to understand the physical and chemical properties of the particles on the moon's surface. By examining the size, shape, and degree of weathering of particles on the moon's surface, it aims to create a full polarization map, including the far side of the moon. NASA's ShadowCam focuses on areas where sunlight never reaches directly. The always shadowed moon's Antarctic and Arctic craters and the interior parts of the craters will be explored, which will uncover evidence of water, rock properties, and volatiles, and this will serve as an advance party for the United States manned lunar exploration that will follow. While these 3 cameras capture the moon's face, 2 measuring instruments tries to look inside of the moon. The moon is very rich in useful resources that can be used by mankind. The KPLO gamma ray spectroscopy, or KGRS, will detect the gamma ray spectrum emitted from the moon's surface in a wide band and draw the distribution of elements on the moon's surface like a map. The moon does not have a magnetic field as strong as the Earth. However, strong magnetic fields are observed in some areas for unknown reasons, and it is expected that KPLO magnetometer, KMAG, that detects even minute changes in the magnetic field will find clues to the moon's past. What if we can freely communicate with space from Earth at any time? If there is space internet, it is possible to do so. It was only possible to communicate with the space only when the satellite was looking at the Earth. But using several probes and satellites as a repeater of the Earth, we can envision creating a space internet network that is without delay or interruption.
마지막으로
Thank you. I would like to wrap up my presentation by talking about future directions of space development. When it comes to the Korea Space Launch Vehicle, through sophistication projects, we are planning to launch 4 more, and we have started working on this. As for the future generation launch vehicle, we are currently in the feasibility study phase. To sum up, it is to transform 3-stage launch vehicle to 2-stage ones to improve the performance by about 3 times while reducing the cost. So we do not have to travel far, and we want to send 1.8-ton class satellites utilizing this future generation launch vehicle. And also, we want to put 1-ton class satellites in the Mars orbit utilizing the future generation launch vehicle. When it comes to satellites, we have finished developing the COMSAT 6, and including the 7th and the 8th, we are currently working on them. It's gonna weigh about 1.7 tons or almost 2 tons, so there are large ones. And when it comes to compact advanced satellite, the industry is working on it. And when it comes to the complex communication satellite development, it is being conducted following the Cheonryeon project. The autonomous car and many other services utilize the service provided by this satellite. And that is why we have decided to work on the Korean Positioning System, or KPS. By 2035, we want to use 8 satellites, 3 on geostationary orbit and the remaining on the inclined orbit. We want to make better use of the satellite to improve the quality of life of Korean people. We already had GPS augmentation system, and we have been working on it, and I think we can picture this completion of this service by the end of this year or the early next year. We aim to make sure that KPLO can return with the samples from the moon. Let me just briefly show you some extra slides that I have prepared. Please bear with me for a few seconds. There are a lot of ground stations. And in Jeju, there is an integrated operation facility. I think you can visit there now. There are 2 antennas, one 7.3 meters tall and the other 13 meters tall, but we plan to build more than 10 antennas here in this complex and many other subsidiary infrastructures. And that would be it from me. Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you for mentioning this specific center which is newly established in Jeju. As a practitioner, actual worker in the field, actually, Mr. Park Tan-hyuk is here. He is the leading personnel who made this project's success. Maybe in the panel discussion you can contribute by giving us some comment. When we talk about space, in the past it was mostly about national security and enhancing the government or the country's position or status in the world. However, listening to your presentation, I believe that this is becoming more and more about the economics, tourism, the resources, the medical, and many other new business opportunities. I think the space will bring so many opportunities to us. Before diving into the panel discussion, maybe I can give you 1 or 2 questions. The future space economy roadmap will be announced. We have to make best efforts and we should not be complacent. Under that condition, how much are we trying to go? I mean, how far are we trying to go? At what level are we trying to reach? Then, what area should we focus the most to enhance our competitiveness? So far, the space industries was mostly about technology development, but the idea of space economy means that we are thinking of the commercialization of the space, basically. There have been diverse discussions regarding space, including forums like this. Many people are gathering together to muster wisdoms. What's most important is to create ecosystem for the space economy, in my opinion, and that of course includes governance. If we can manage to establish the ecosystem, the next question we have to think about is if the space economy can be competitive enough and contribute to the national development. For me personally, as a solution to this, to answer to this question, I would like to say this. We thought that the space is something like a spin-off. However, in the new space era, I don't think that rhetoric applies. I believe that non-space industries could be applied to the space industry to generate new technological innovation. If we can make this happen, we can drastically improve our position in the global space industry. Currently, we only occupy 1% of the entire global industry, but that means we have 99% more market to eat, basically. So I think the space industry is the area where we can feel confident and work harder.
곽지용 회장님,
We do have next president of Korean Federation of Science and Technology Societies with me. I think that before we listen to the presentation of the next president, you said something really encouraging that we need to have a convergence. Now, I just wonder if President Lee would agree with what President Lee Sang-yeol has just said. Once again, my congratulations. And Kim Sang-yeop, the moderator, has asked me an excellent question. So we may launch rockets, we may launch satellites, and they are a very important part of the space economy. But when it comes to non-space, we call this a probing or probes. So in the astronomy and other basic sciences are quite important. And when it comes to engineering, there's so-called the probe. And there is the Geological Research Institute, that thinks about developing resources on the moon, and there's also the construction research, and that does thinks about building in a space basis on the moon. And so non-rockets and non-satellites, well, they're quite important, and I think we do here in Korea have the competitiveness. And NASA had about 86 teams that were participating in competition in Korea. The Korean team actually took up the number one position. So what I'm trying to say is that the rockets are important, satellites are important. And when we talk about space economy, well, it also includes other elements, such as the probing. Or exploration, and we do have competitiveness in that particular field. And Mr. Lee Tae-soo served as the president of the Construction Technology Research Institute and has been a pioneer in the areas that are very future oriented. So Mr. Tae-sik Lee, I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and he's going to talk to us about Jeju as the space base. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the next president of the Korean Federation of Science and Technology Society. When you saw the launch of the rocket, you all applauded. The success of the launch, well, that's important. But what's really important is that we were able to become a truly independent country when it comes to rockets, the launches. And then we do have so when we first launched the rocket, we had to depend on the Russian technology. And there's a roundtable that is held by the leading experts. We were not invited to roundtable because we had to depend on the Russian technology. But now with this new launch, we were able to do so with our own technology. So now we can be a member of that roundtable. And I want to introduce Park Ki-tae and Choi Seung-ho and Park Jong-ho, and these 4 gentlemen you see helped us to prepare this presentation. Park Ki-tae is a colonel, and he is the first head of the Space Center, and we were. Well, I think, do you remember this protester who came onto the stage? Oh, I think you were quite surprised. Now, I was surprised too. And here we have the Lieutenant Che. Well, he is involved in the space and the developments. And the 2 gentlemen in the back are consultants involved in construction and architecture. So 5 of us, including myself, we have prepared the presentation together. And also Kim Sang-yeop, when he was the chairperson of our federation, he has helped us greatly. And I was able to meet with the governor of the Jeju province for about an hour. And I was also able to talk to JDC, which is an organization below the Ministry of Land and Infrastructure. So I met with the head of that organization, and I was able to meet with Kim Do-wan, who is the head of a village called because that village is playing an integral role in making Jeju of as the hub of space activities here in Korea. And so our president made a presentation in August of this year. And there were a lot of discussion as to where this space center is going to be. For in Cheonnam, it's going to be a center for the launch vehicles in Chungnam, and there's going to be a research center. Anyway, I'm talking about all these different locations, and we do have quite a bit of attendance from Jeju and the people from space. But when it comes to space, what's really important is economy. I mean, we do emphasize software. Without education and training, we would not have the necessary resources. And if you look at the age groups of those that are working at space institutions, it's about 45 to 50 years old. So we don't have young blood here. And so I've been telling people that we do need education and training center, and I propose that center be built here in Jeju. And can we move on to the next page, please? And what I want to emphasize is this. We have become one of the 7 powerful countries when it comes to space. And is it rockets and satellites? Are they everything? I mean, in the space industry? Not really. Space industry, the exploration or the probing are just as important. And if you go to Florida or Texas, they have space centers. And those space centers provide education and training to the youngsters. And so we do have, I understand, have the hardware, but we do need a software, metaverse, AI. So what are we going to utilize them in order to provide education and training to our young people? And this is Analog Astro Training Center. This is Space Analog Simulation Training Center. We do not have a spacecraft, where manned, spacecraft. So you may wonder why we need this. And I think we all need to prepare, for one day that we can go to the moon and to the Mars, and therefore we do need to train the civilian spacemen. And Colonel Park is a pilot, and he has been able to test until G9. So if you're going to like a 5G, you do need training. So we're going to be building this training center in Jeju to provide that sort of training. And you do see ENI Korea. And so with the international explorer, this was merged with another company, actually a venture enterprise. And so that, how much time do I have? So I'll be quick. I'll be really quick. Yes, your time is already up, but if you could just continue. Anyway, can I just move on to the next page, please? And so how are we going to lay the foundation? As I said, we need, of course, hotels, we need ports. Here in Jeju, so the transportation means is excellent. And also Jeju has other excellent elements that make Jeju a hub for space. That is a space training. So we're talking about 20,000 pyong, and we could build the space centers here in the first phase, and then in the second phase we could build a Jeju Space Mines, and then in the third phase that we're going to be building a space infrastructure. And this we are talking about the slot or the site that JDC has set aside for innovative activities. We are very specific here, and this is Hwacheongun 3-1. So you see very specific addresses here. So we are talking about something very concrete and specific with the province of Jeju. And there's something called the HISIS. So if you go to HISIS, you will be able to see about the training center that is located in Hawaii. And we want to have something very similar here in Jeju Island. And this is for, of course, us specialists. But we also want something for youth. We want to have an experimental center. And so for the professional center, we're going to be training about 120 people. And in the private space center, we're going to be training about 500 people. And as for the international space training center, there is Lee So-yeon, a very famous space person, astronaut. And she also went through a school like this, and we're going to be starting a very similar school here in Korea from November. And this is a module. There's going to be 10 pyong, and about 6 people will be staying here for 8 months without going out. And why 8 months? Because it takes about 8 months to go to Mars. So people have to get to know how to live one by one with other people in a very closed space. And if you go to the moon, you only need 2 weeks instead of 8 months. And on the right-hand side, you're looking at the draft drawing of the space center. I'm going to now talk for about a minute more. And this is about the drawings of the center in Hawaii. And so we do have the necessary preparation to build this space center here in Jeju. And so we'll be the first to have this sort of space center. I'm showing you this because I wanted to tell you this is not just in our imagination, and this is not going to be unplanned or disorganized construction. And I believe that Space City is a smart city. So we're going to be setting up a smart city or the Space City complex. And as we are going to be thinking about the habitats, we're going to have the CEO courses related to space education. So there are so many programs that we have prepared, and I hope that you will continue to provide us with the support so that this program will be successful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I wish I could give you more time, but we will stop here for now. The government initially tried to push forward with the special economic zones, 3 of them, the satellite-focused one, R&D-focused one, and the launch vehicle-focused one. But diving deeper, the training and the education is becoming another focal point, and Jeju is pointed out an ideal place. And I don't know, those who are joining from the YouTube can see this, but we had some protesters here on site whose worries were like, maybe all this entire project can lead to the reckless development of the space. And I think this in line with the public acceptance as well. So I think maybe we can talk about this issue. Thank you. With that, let me invite Professor Han Jae-heung of the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology for his comments. He would like to talk about the paradigm shift in the global space industry and Jeju's tasks forward. Hello, I'm Professor Han Jae-heung from KAIST, as was introduced. We can see that we have 33 minutes left here in this session, so I might have to speed up. I think we have done a good job at the country level in terms of space development, so I would like to thank President Lee Sang-ryul for KARI in this regard. He has been a good worker in the field basically, so we were very late. We came late to the party, but we didn't miss any satellite launch, and we didn't have any single failure when it comes to satellite launch. It is all thanks to the hardworking people like President Lee. Satellites observe the Earth. They take photos, and out of course, national security reasons partly. But we can see a lot of foreign cases which are making an interesting use of the satellites. In a non-gravity environment, if we can light up the candle, the light does not just go up. It creates a circle, beautiful circle. And if we want to create a component, we have to make it very fine and delicate. But on Earth, because of the gravity, we cannot create a perfect circle. However, in space, we can make it happen. And those in the bio industry say that in a zero gravity environment, cells' behaviors get different. They change. So when creating medicine, if it takes about a month to create a medicine on Earth, in space, we can accelerate the entire process because cells behave differently in in space. What I'm trying to say is that it is time for us to explore into new areas related to space. So-called hardware areas such as the launch vehicle, the manufacturing of the satellite, and hardware-related industry take up about 15% of the entire space-related industry, and the rest comes from the usage of these space elements or the hardwares. And I hear that we had this opening ceremony of this integrated management center of Jeju in Jeju. So it's gonna collect all the data from all the satellites that we are currently operating. Many of the data is currently confined to the use for the navigation and the observation, but Jeju will be the first focal point where all the data comes down to. And I think Jeju is blessed to have this facility. And I was asked to give you some of my opinions regarding Jeju's tasks going forward in terms of space. We have mentioned 3 pillars when it comes to national space visions, but these 3 pillars are all focused on the 15% of the entire industry that I have mentioned. I think it is now time for us to bring about new topics in terms of space. They may be like training centers, and also we can invite a lot of bright minds to Jeju to come up with interesting usage of space. And I think I can finish here, and I'm giving you 1 minute out of my share. Thank you. Thank you. It was very compact and brief. You have mentioned that we have a lot more possibilities to explore beyond what we have been focused on so far, be it launch vehicle experiment and so on and so forth. Back then, the previous governor, Won Hee-ryong, provided best support to the space industry back then. And just like you had a meeting with the Governor Oh, the new administration in Jeju is also trying to showcase a good leadership in the space industry, which is, I believe, a very encouraging sign. And I have to introduce a next panelist who I like so much. We have CEO of Parrish, Shin Dong-yun. Why did he launch the Korea sounding rocket? The rocket is titled Blue Whale. If you look at the extraordinary attorney Woo, a lot of whales feature there, right? But why did you name the rocket whale?
우영우랑 뭐 관련이
Is that any way related to extraordinary attorney Wu? Well, when we were building the launching vehicles, the animal names are given, and it's sort of like a tradition. A lot of people think that space is an extension of aircraft, but I don't know if you've seen Star Trek's. And the spacecraft is more like a ship, a vessel. So there is a culture in the West that is looking at space as ocean, and that is why they call space. I mean, they have this terminology, spaceship. And so I think that space is like a sea that we can navigate, and I think that humanity's culture changed as people became able to navigate the ocean, and I think the same thing would happen with the space. I think I have to stop you here. So Professor Han, you should be proud that you have excellent students like Mr. Shin. So, Mr. Shin, can you talk to us why you want to build a Jeju port, I guess. So I will stop talking about blue whale here. Now I want to talk about, let me talk about myself. I wasn't really focused on making rockets. I just wanted to be able to launch something into the space. I don't have a specific goals or objectives. I'm not like dreaming of doing something great. Since I was very little, I liked making things. And the most complicated, most difficult thing to make was, to make something that would go into space. And the rocket launch, this was something that really excited me. I don't know how many of you have seen the rockets being launched. The space is so deep. It's completely different than airplanes. Something that's right in front of you would go deep, deep, deep into the space. And you begin to think, is this space really that we live in so flat? And I think that space is providing us a new dimension. And here on Earth, everybody who was born and died on Earth were just born. They were just living on the surface of the Earth. But my generation, we can go deeper than that. We can go higher than that. And space, people used to think about the security. Well, that's that's for the people that are using in space. But if you look at this from a humanity point of view, and as we are living creatures on Earth, and space provides us a new direction of our survival. And so this protester I know her. She was there when we were launching our rockets. I do remember her myself too. Anyway, for our future generation, well, but they don't have to live the way our ancestors used to live. And we have to give opportunities to the future generation. It should be the future generation that decide about the future. And now I want to talk to you why, within 2 minutes and 30 seconds, how I came to make the launching vehicles. And I went to this space department, or the space engineering department at KAIST, and Professor Han, who's sitting right to my right, and it's a stranger person than I am, because he was willing to help me. Because I just wanted to make rockets. I was naive. I just wanted to make rockets, and Professor Han, and he should know the way of the world better, but he was willing to help me. I don't know when I get as old as Professor Han, whether I'll be so I would be able to help others, that were dreaming like me. And so I was thinking about how I could make rockets, and how I could make those rockets smaller. Anyways, and I thinking back, I think everybody really wanted to be able to launch rockets. It's just the strange people like me, that are able to do so. And so the people are looking at a person like me who's strange and is willing to help. And Professor Kim was also willing to help. And so there were people around me who were willing to help, and that is why I was able to do what I did. And in December, we had unofficial lunch, and that went quite well. And then afterwards, we had an official lunch, and that failed. And I was so embarrassed. Anyway, we had the third lunch, and it went up. It was quite successful. And now we want to do something more meaningful, and this is different from the large space rockets. This is a rocket that will be able to deliver very, very small things into the space. And as was mentioned by our previous speaker, I'm also thinking about education and training. There's a SpaceX, companies like SpaceX in the United States, and the people, it's the engineers that is enabling such companies. And these people, they're not people like me. They used to make rockets when they were in college. But here in Korea, it's so difficult for the students to make a rocket and send those rockets into the space. But I think there's a possibility here in Jeju in order to allow people to dream and to make small rockets and to actually see those rockets that they have made sent into the space. And so that is a possibility, and I think that possibility can be realized here in Jeju. And I think Jeju can be a place where the future generation can be developed. Thank you.
정말
Thank you. I think we have to think simple in a way. Seo Shin just wanted to launch a rocket, and his professor said, then try it. If you think this is going to be impossible, it's not going to happen. But Mission Impossible is the mission that is given to be achieved, right? I was there when you said the launch was failed, and we had a very strong windy day, and since we had VIPs, so many VIPs there, we couldn't change the date, and all the media was there. And as for the launch pad, when it's windy, we have to extend the launch pad by bringing some more from the mainland Korea. In the exercise, it was launched so well, but in the official launch, it was because of the winds, we couldn't make this happen. But I assure you, in the original attempt, it worked so well. Then what would be the infrastructure that Jeju needs for the space development? In Florida, there is small launch space or facility where you can launch sounding rockets. And I think this small aerospace center would be a good thing. Maybe it's going to be a place where students can visit, write their name down, and touch the aircraft and so on and so forth. So Jeju Airport, Jeju Port, is it up and moving? It is not that we have begun the construction, but working with the KAIS, maybe I think we can start working on it. In the United States, there is a renamed city called Spaceport, and there, students from all across the world visit this spaceport, and there is this competition for students to launch their own rockets and so on and so forth. As you're well aware, Jeju is closest to the equator in Korea, and we face the ocean, as you are well aware, and oceans embody new possibilities. And I come to think of what port means in terms of these possibilities. We have 20 more minutes, and here I think it is now time for us to invite CTO Yoon Jong-ho from the Korea Aerospace Industries. He will talk about the idea of new space. Hello, I am Yoon Jong-ho from KAI. I majored in structural integrity, actually. That was my focal point. So the satellites or the launch vehicle were the areas where I provided technical expertise to. And with that, I was introduced to the space industry. President Lee pointed out so aptly, with the introduction of the term space economy, the entire structure was divided into the upstream and the downstream industry. Ratio of downstream and upstream industry in the entire space industry is becoming a new thing, 50-50 or 80-20 and so on and so forth. And what President Lee just painted during his presentation is the entire picture of the Korean space industry. When it comes to policy, it's Chungcheong, and the satellite is going to be the Gyeongsangnam-do area, and when it comes to launch vehicle, it's going to be a Jeollanam-do area. So these are the three pillars of the domestic space industry. But as a person working in the industry, I came to think about how Jeju should view the entire industry. I'm sorry to say this, but the space as a sector has been the coast sector traditionally. That means it spent money, it didn't earn money. Why are you sorry to say this? Because that was the sad reality. But because of the introduction of the space economy, it is our job to translate this cost sector into profit sector. And in terms of doing so, the initiative is being transferred from the public to private. And when the private sector leads the development of space industry, we dub this new space. So basically, new space is about how we can generate money. And the idea is to generate money from the space with private market leading the initiative and efforts. Technology transfer to the private market, private sector, and creating profits from the private sector is related to the issue of resource usage. I mean, how are we going to use and allocate the public resources? As you're well aware, in Korea we have all the facilities that we need. And if you look at the space promotion industry, it will never allow for redundancy nor missing technology. Then from Jeju perspective, what direction should we aim in entering the new space era? And I think that is the question that we have to address. In the upstream sector, to generate profits, of course, efforts should be made, and the same applies to the downstream sector. I want you to think this way. We have to create an environment where we can launch satellites. And having said that, maybe the assembly can be done here or can be done somewhere else and be transferred to here. We have to think which is a more economical way. I don't think you have done this economic analysis, but I think Jeju, above all, should do this. And after launching, you have to think about the satellite that would be loaded on top of the launch vehicle. And the payload should be in clean room, right before the launch. Then how can we make sure that they are assembled in the clean room status right before they get launched in a launch vehicle? What would be the flow of this entire process? And I think Jeju should think about these entire process as well. When it comes to payloads, we have to make these payloads, assemble them, we have to test them in a clean room, and we can mount this on satellite. We cannot just think that this entire process would be easy. So I think what Jeju has to do is which part of this process Jeju can tackle first. From downstream area, we are faced with a lot of difficulties as well. My company is located in Sacheon in Gyeongsang-namdo province. Many say that our company is an SME or medium-sized company located in rural area, and they're right. This augmented intelligence and data science is a good technology to maintain your companies, but aside from that, technology companies cannot sustain themselves in a very good way. But if Jeju decided to target the space industry as a new industry, I think you have to focus on the domain knowledge that will be generated, and the data science and the augmented intelligence should be combined with the domain expertise you are going to build. You have to try to predict the future, and you have to try to nurture the talent, human resources, which can have an expertise in these areas, because unless you do so, even after you are off to a good start, you are not going to sustain your momentum. That was my idea about what Jeju has to do going forward. And because of the time constraint, I will stop here. Thank you.
정말 20여 년간
Well, he's been involved in the industry for over 2 decades, so he was able to talk to us based on such experience. Well, Sacheon of Gyeongnam, I hope will become an excellent hub for space industry in Korea. And he has said that what's really important is people, and I completely agree. Well,
그래서
The government will not allow for redundancy. Yes, you mentioned this. When I was in the government, the massive amount of money was put into R&D sector, but sometimes this redundancy is inevitable. So intended redundancy can generate competition, and sometimes competition help us find a leader, the most competent player. That happens in other sectors, but do you see that it's not going to be likely in the space sector? Yes, competition is, of course, what we have to do. But being able to compete is that you have this logic to persuade others. But when it comes to the space, the ratio that space takes up in terms of R&D, I don't think redundancy would be allowed. Thank you. With that, I think it's time for me to introduce you to the last panelists. We have Mr. Jo Na-moon from the Jeju Research Institute. From the industry perspective, he would talk about the possibilities that he thinks Jeju has. Please keep in mind that we do not have a lot of time remaining. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jo Na-moon, and Associate Research Fellow at Jeju Research Institute. When I first joined Institute, the president of the research institute at the time, who is the chairperson of this session, has talked to me about a rocket launch, and he has told me to follow the development of space industry. And I thought, oh, this is so new. I mean, this is not something that I'm used to. So that was less than a year ago. So in less than a year, well, space has become a quite important issue here in Jeju, and that is quite surprising. And the reports that I've written back then, about a year ago, those reports are quoted by people, and I'm so happy. And I'm very proud. And it seems that the President, Sang Kim, has an excellent insights and wisdom. And as was mentioned by our chairperson, Sangil Park here has done a lot of work for space industry development here on the Jeju Island, and he's now sitting in the audience. I've been following up on the development of the space industry here in Jeju, and I was able to learn quite a bit of things. And let me talk to you about what I've learned in that process. And so in September, there was the opening of the National Space Center. I don't know whether it was because of such a center opening, but there were so many forums and seminars that were being held here in Jeju. Maybe it's because of the center or not, I don't know. And there is... And one of the discussions that took place in those forums and the conferences was that when the Jeju was in competition with Goheung as a site where the rocket would be launched, people who were and it seems that the opinions of the Jeju residents were not properly reflected in that process. And back in 99 and 2000, so that's about 20 years ago, and when they were talking about choosing sites for the rocket launches, and since then, in 20 years, a lot of things have changed here in Jeju. And with the space related facilities take up a lot of land, a lot of space, and in order to be able to launch, you do need a lot of land. And as was during last forum, there was a discussion about launching a rocket from sea, and I was really impressed to hear that. And one of the new things that I've learned from this forum is about the importance of downstream, and also about education and training. Or I think it was quite important that there was a mention about the importance of education and training. And if you look at major industries here in Jeju, they are agriculture and tourism. But we are here in Jeju working to develop so-called the future industries. And a space industry is not explicitly included as part of the future industries. There is a plan for the future development of Jeju, and there are about 100 different projects. And none of those projects include anything related to space. And I think that maybe we'd have to think about ways to include the space industry in the future industries. Well, I think that Jeju has the highest deployment of electric vehicles here in Korea, so that's an excellent achievement. And as a researcher's point of view, what do you think in terms of acceptance of Jeju residents, in terms of commitment on the part of the government for space industry? I mean, what do you think? About the rocket launch by Paris, there was active cooperation from the community members, but there were people who did not like the launch. So there are differing opinions, and there are clashes of opinions, but I think that opinion is moving to be more favorable. And Jeju Research Institute is providing venue for communication, and I think that's a very important role that is being played by the institute. And we do have the research division head as well. And so let's give it up for Jeju Research Institute, because it is working hard to develop space industry.
With 5 minutes and 30 seconds left, I want to give you this question. What if you have to pick one, what would be the precondition for the success, like deregulation, national innovation, national leadership, and the long-term talent development, or the space governance, and so on and so forth? If you have to pick one among all the possible options, that would be a great way to wrap up this session. But before that, here on site, we have Mr. Park Hee-tae. He's a captain of the Air Force, and he has a PhD in the space engineering as well. Can I invite you for your comment? Can you face camera so that the audience online can see you? Maybe you can face the camera and give us your comment. I'm not here to represent the Air Force as a caveat, and from the academic scene, I'm still writing some papers, and this is such a sensitive issue here in Jeju. So I thought that I would just maintain low profile, but here this panelist talked about the launch pad and launch vehicle, and I could see that there are a lot of people who are also thinking about me, just like I think about this issue just like me. Jeju was a ideal candidate when we were trying to build another facility, as was mentioned by panelists. When I visit diverse space seminars overseas, many say space is hard, meaning literally that space is difficult area. We are, despite the several decades long efforts, because mainly because however effort we make and however much effort we make, what we do on the ground is not exactly the same in the space environment. So what we have to do is to create a facility where we can make a more efficient effort. And as was put by the experts, and as was put by the moderator, we can save more costs. We can save costs and put more payloads on the rocket if we are closer to the equator. And that is Jeju basically. Jeju is the closest to equator, and we are facing oceans. And here, from Jeju, equator, inclination, orbit, all these are our potential targets because we are facing ocean. We do not have boundaries. So I hope that we can work with the Jeju Research Institute for more potentials and for more possibilities. This has been Korea's Top Gun, Korea's Maverick, Mr. Park. And thank you for your patience in waiting. So I have one question. Can I spend 4 or 5 minutes here? My last question is this. NASA is aiming 2040 or 2050 to make moon habitable area. And all the scarce resources such as helium-3 or titanium can be used as our potential resources if we do lunar exploration. Then, is Korea also devising policies with inhabitable moon vision in mind? I mentioned inhabitable Earth, and maybe it is now time for us to look at the space as an habitable area. Unfortunately, we are not doing manned project for space, but next year, the 4th Space Development Promotion Basic Plan will be announced next year, and there is this saying or expectation that manned exploration will be part of this basic plan for promotion. And like I said, the US, the Europe, China, and Russia are trying to establish a moon base, and I think this can be achieved way before 2040. So what we are trying to think about is this. At the early 2030, we are trying to land our probe on the moon. And by the mid-2030s, I think one of the leading players in this industry will be able to build a moon base. So we have to approach this as a two-track basis. We, of course, have to make way for the manned exploration, but at the same time, we have to focus on beefing up our efforts in terms of international cooperation. And we have a lot of experts for construction of these infrastructure and so on and so forth. So I say that we have to be more aggressive in intensifying the international cooperation.
식만 드리겠습니다.
Going to give each panelist about a minute to talk about what's necessary for success of space industry or space economy. Well, for space economy to be successful, we have to change our way of thinking. We don't have to go any place to be in space. We are already living in the space as part of this planet. And so space development, or what we are developing as part of as an industry, for space industry, that is, we are developing things that can be used on Earth as well. And I hope that I want to first say what Jeju should do. And I think it's very important for Jeju to choose projects that it's going to focus on very wisely. And as was mentioned by other speakers, in the space, when there are space technologies, and we don't have to think about spin-off, from those technologies. We could also think that in the space industry we could adapt technologies that have been developed in other domains, in other fields. I just wanted to emphasize that.
Mr. Shin, when I first said that I want to launch a rocket, many people helped me, but no one not single one of them said, no, it's not gonna happen. And I think that would be a big characteristics of this field. If they want to if they set a goal, they achieve it. And as for the Jeju industry, if the people think that this industry will contribute to the Jeju, I think they work hard to make this happen. Then what is the items or the areas where Jeju can specialize in? I think this is an area where we have to think a lot about, but once decisions are set, I think Jeju can, of course, and definitely and certainly become a leader and achieve the targets set. Thank you. Then Mr. Yoon. If the policymaker of Jeju or the residents of Jeju ask me, I would say the space industry is not necessarily about launch vehicles. Soft technology is the profit maker, and I think we have to think about how we can make good use of it and what part of the soft technology we should focus on. Yes, space is wide and we have a lot of work to do. Thank you. Then Dr. Jo? Policy-wise, we need some backup and support, but I think we have to create this environment where people can voluntarily get together. In terms of downstream industry, it was a spontaneous development basically. I think in the short term, it is wise for us to focus on this downstream industry. And personally, listening to this presentation, I found this word impressive. You mentioned that your company is medium-sized one in rural area, distant area. One of the characteristics of Jeju is this: if there is one school in Jeju or one company in Jeju, it feels like that school or that company is located not actually in rural areas or remote areas. It feels like they are located in very special environment and unique environment. And I think we have to make the most use of this unique attractiveness that Jeju has. That would be it. Thank you.
We would like to ask President Lee Sang-yeol, can you give us last remarks about the success factors, factors that would make a space industry and space economy successful? For the past 3 decades, you see that we have made tremendous progress, and that was thanks to the capabilities of the Korean people. And so I believe that we have to maximize the use of human resources. And we should be able to draw a broader picture. In a space, there's a competition among the countries. But if you think about it, space could be a place for the whole humanity. So we have to do regional cooperation. We have to have international cooperation so that we can all work towards development of space. And I hope that Jeju would be able to propose a new ecosystem in the space.
신문 칼럼에서
A while ago, I read this column. Korea could advance this much not because of the politicians, but because of the engineers and scientists and those hardworking experts in their domain areas. And I couldn't agree more with that column. Just like our panelist said, when I ask my students the difference between universe and space, universe exists without people, without human beings, but space can only exist because it is a space that it is the concept which predicates the human existence and the human activity. So we have to recognize space as a communal area, communal space. I understand that residents why residents are worried about the possibility of reckless development of this space. The grand theme of this Jeju Forum is coexistence and cooperation. Here in this new space, I hope that we have to uphold this value of coexistence and cooperation to soothe these worries. With that, I would like to wrap up today's session. Thank you.